So what I want to start with is cryptocurrency itself. And I'm going to break that down into two words. The first is crypto, and the second is currency. And let's start with currency. We all know what currency is. We use it every day. We use it to buy, sell, give money away, receive money from other folks. It's our US dollars, the euros, British pounds, Swiss francs. So that type of currency is also known as a fiat currency. And a fiat currency is a currency that is issued by a government, and it serves as legal tender. You can't actually exchange fiat currency for a commodity. I can't bring my US dollars in and say, here, please give me cash, give me gold. But we recognize, for instance, the US dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the US government, whatever that is worth to you. And so we all have faith in the system because this is what we're used to using, the fiat currency. There are two other terms for currency that you may want to be aware of. One is digital currency. And digital currency is any currency that typically is transacted in a digital computer system. So that would include cryptocurrency, but it does also include some central bank digital currency, which is currency that some governments are issuing, and it's tied to their fiat currency. So that's digital currency. And then the final currency is virtual currency, and that would be what cryptocurrency falls in. It is only traded on a digital network, and it's mostly issued by private parties. It's not backed by any government at all. So that's currency. Now let's move to the crypto part of cryptocurrency. And crypto is derived from the term cryptography. Cryptography is the practice of developing or using algorithms to encrypt or secure data or communications so that only those who are authorized can access that data or communications. And cryptography is a very important aspect of cryptocurrency and the system on which cryptocurrency runs. Some of the different types of cryptocurrency you've probably heard. Obviously, Bitcoin is the most popular and the most well-known. And then there is Ethereum, but there are many others like Solana, Cardano, Ripple, and a whole host of other coins. They're also maybe referred to as tokens. Another term that is important to know is altcoins. So I just named Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, Ripple. Those are all called altcoins. Anything other than Bitcoin is considered an altcoin. Bitcoin was the first. ALT, altcoin, yes. So the next thing I want to talk about is the blockchain. And we've all been hearing about the blockchain for many, many years. That is not a new term. Whether or not we understand it may be something else, but we've all heard about the blockchain. And that is what the most cryptocurrency runs on. So what is a blockchain? Well, it's just what the it's just what the term says. It is a chain of blocks. The blockchain is a distributed, decentralized network that stores a digital ledger. So there is no central authority for a blockchain. So one thing that is very different from the blockchain compared to what we are used to in our fiat currency is that it is decentralized. So for the fiat currency that we use, it is controlled by the Federal Reserve, at least in the United States, and we have all the banks that manage the movement of US dollars. But that's different in the blockchain. In the blockchain, all the transactions are distributed and they are stored in blocks, and there is no central authority over the transactions that occur in a blockchain. So for us, in our fiat currency, in the US dollars, we all put our faith in the banks, we put our faith in the Federal Reserve, and we trust that the transactions that are being recorded are accurate. For instance, if I transfer funds to Lori, I may say I'm transferring her $100, and so I keep track of that, and Lori keeps track that I transferred $100 to her. But if she thinks that I transferred 1,000 and I say I transferred 100, we always go to the bank statements because we trust the bank statements. And that's our form of trust in the system. But the question is, how do you gain that trust in the blockchain? Because in the blockchain, everything is distributed and there's no one entity that is keeping track of all of those blocks. So we're going to get into the trust and how it's built into the blockchain. But first, I want to talk about components of the blockchain. And the components of the blockchain would be the blocks themselves. So in the blockchain, and when you're trading currencies, I might transfer funds to Austin. Austin might transfer funds to Talara. Talara might transfer funds to George, and so on and so forth. So when these transactions occur in a blockchain, they are stored in what they call a mempool. And then they have people who go gather up transactions. They can gather up 2,000 to 4,000 transactions, combine them together, and they put them in a block. And that block is then added to the blockchain. So you have the current block that is created. It points back to the previous block of 2,000 to 4,000 transactions, which points back to the previous block, and so on and so forth. So if you wanted to see all the transactions that happen in a blockchain, you would have to gather all the distributed blocks, combine all those transactions together to see the total picture of what happened. And one thing I wanted to say about a blockchain, every cryptocurrency has its own blockchain. So there's a Bitcoin blockchain, there's an Ethereum blockchain, and so on and so forth. One other comparison to consider as far as the distributed ledger goes, so in fiat currency, let's talk about IAG. We have our own ledger. Our ledger is where we record all the funds that come into IAG, all the funds that go out, where did the funds come from, what were they used for. And we only have certain people who can access that ledger, record things in the ledger, and look at the ledger, but it's centrally controlled. They don't have the same thing in the blockchain because the ledger in the blockchain is distributed. So that's where the issues could potentially arise, because how do you know that this blockchain of distributed information is valid, right? Because I might transfer funds to Talara, like I said earlier, 100 Bitcoin, and she thinks I transferred 1,000 Bitcoins. So how do we know what the truth is? And that's and that's where cryptography comes into play. So I talked about there were blocks and they are all linked together. The question is, how are those blocks created? And like I said, everybody has their individual transactions. The transactions go into a mempool. And one thing about the transactions that you need to consider is you do not have to pay a transaction fee to trade in Bitcoin or any of the cryptocurrencies, but you might want to, because what happens when they have people called miners, and miners are the people who actually build these blocks. And what they do, the first thing they do is they think, okay, I'm going to go sort all of the transactions that have not yet been processed. They are pending transactions, and I'm going to sort them by transaction fee, highest to lowest. Because I am a miner, and the way I get paid is I get paid with transaction fees. If there are transaction fees, I get to keep them. So my incentive is to sort these transactions in order of highest to lowest transaction fee. I'll grab the top 2,000 to 4,000 transactions, however many I can fit in a block, and then I will do what I need to do to create that block. So if you're not willing to pay a transaction fee for your transaction, miners may not be willing to process your transaction very quickly. It may sit around for a while before it is processed. So once the miners grab their 2,000 to 4,000 transactions, this is where the cryptography comes into play. They have to create a unique key or unique ID for that block. And the way they do that, they use what they call hashing algorithms. And hashing algorithm is when you can take a large set of data and you can run it through mathematical algorithms to come up with a fixed length number. Might be like 32 characters long or 64 characters long. And when you come up with that fixed number in the blockchain systems have rules for how that unique identifier should be created. They might say the unique identifier has to be less than a certain number. And so what the miners do is they keep cycling through trying to find a unique ID that satisfies the blockchain system's requirement for creating a unique ID. And this is somewhat similar to, I saw an analogy, it's kind of like a combination lock. You know, we all have the combination locks for our gym lockers or in school. You have five numbers, you turn the cylinders until you can get to your combination. Well, what the miners are doing is, it's been compared to maybe turning 1 million cylinders to come up with the right code to create this block. And once they create this block, then they can get other miners in the blockchain to validate the block. And if it is validated, they can add it to the blockchain, and then they can get paid for the transaction fees. One other way that miners get paid is they get a block reward. And a block reward is payment for actually doing all the work to add the block to the blockchain. And so in Bitcoin's example, they might get paid 3.125 Bitcoin for adding a block to the blockchain. That's pretty significant payment. So that's how the blocks are created. Now, blockchains also have this term called a consensus mechanism. And there are two types of consensus mechanisms. There's a proof of work and a proof of stake. Bitcoin blockchain uses the proof of work. And what proof of work means, when it's time to create a new block, all the miners out there who are interested can try to create a new block. Anybody can be a miner. All you need is the right computer system. I don't know that a laptop would be enough unless it's very slightly more sophisticated hardware. And then you can download the software, and then you can do the mining yourself. So there are a lot of people out there competing to create blocks. And so in proof of work, anybody can try to create a block. They run through all the process, trying to find their unique ID to be the first person to add it to the blockchain. And like I said, if they add it to a blockchain, they get the block rewards. And yes?
Why do I care whether a miner gets paid? Or why do I care if my transaction gets added to a block?
Because if your transaction does not get added to a block, the transaction is not complete. It's just going to be a pending transaction. Okay. Yeah, so in Bitcoin, you have all these people competing in the blockchain, and so that's why it's called proof of work, because you have to do the work to win. Ethereum and some other cryptocurrencies use another consensus mechanism, which is called proof of stake. And proof of stake is more like a lottery system. They have a staking pool where anyone who is a miner can say, okay, I'm going to put in a certain amount of Ethereum coins into this staking pool. And then they draw out from the pool who's going to be the next person who gets to mine a block. So there is not the competition and all the work, everybody doing all the work to create a block. The more coin you have in the staking pool, the better your chances are to be able to create a block. So that's the consensus mechanism. And what the cryptography does when it creates these blocks, the reason it is important is because it creates unique IDs that can be replicated based on the information in the block. So that if even one character in the block were to change, the ID would, the block would no longer be valid. So by creating this unique ID, it makes the blocks immutable, or they can't be changed. And that is what becomes a single source of truth for the blockchain, so that the people who are trading in the blockchain can have confidence that the transactions are being properly recorded. And that is important because the blocks are distributed across many different networks, and there's no one central authority. So that gives you a brief overview of the blockchain and the cryptocurrency. Now let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin itself and some statistics and interesting fun facts. Yes?
I'm new to all this, but like, if I went to buy Bitcoin, trade somebody Bitcoin or whatever the right terminology, I mean, how long does it usually take before it gets finalized?
I think it depends on how much you're willing to pay in a transaction fee. Maybe 10 minutes with a transaction fee, maybe 10 minutes. But if you have no transaction fee and it's a smaller transaction, it can take a little while. But I think generally it might be around 10 minutes or so. So let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit. First of all, does anybody know the difference between Bitcoin with a capital B and Bitcoin with a lowercase b? Okay, well, there is a difference. And it's important to know if you want to communicate with the people in the crypto world. Bitcoin with a capital B refers to the Bitcoin blockchain itself. Bitcoin with a lowercase b refers to the Bitcoin currency. So I would like to have 100 lowercase b Bitcoin, which would mean I have 100 coins of Bitcoin, which would be a nice investment to have right now. Yes?
How much is a lowercase Bitcoin worth right now?
As of last night, it was just under $114,000 per coin.
112.
Oh, 112 today? It's a little volatile, but still, you know, yes. Does anybody know, is the quantity of Bitcoin, is it a finite quantity or an infinite number? Finite. How many, what's the maximum number of Bitcoin that there ever will be in circulation? 21 million. Bitcoin. Right now, there are just over 19.9 million Bitcoin in circulation. So the way that more Bitcoin comes into circulation is with those block rewards I was talking about. So every time a block is added to the blockchain, more Bitcoin is released into circulation. So the current estimate is that it will be not until 2040 until all the Bitcoin, the 21 million units, are in circulation in the blockchain.
Pat, how much was the coin worth?
It's right around 114,000. 112,000, did you say, Justin?
112,000 today.
Yeah.
How much was it worth X number of years ago? How much was it
Oh, good
worth?
heavens.
So we're actually going to
Pennies.
talk about that. That was something I was going to bring up. May 22nd, I believe, is known as Bitcoin Pizza Day. And it marks the first time in history that Bitcoin was used to buy a product or a good or a service. And someone paid 10,000 Bitcoin to have 2 Domino's pizzas delivered.
This was in 2010, right?
Yes, this was in 2010.
So another thing to consider is when Bitcoin first started, the block reward used to be 50 Bitcoin. That would be rather significant if you were to get 50 Bitcoin today. Today, the block reward, as I said earlier, is 3.125 Bitcoin, which is still rather significant. I'd be happy with one of those Bitcoin. And the way the block rewards work is about every 4 years or so, they half what the block reward is, and that's why it's gone from 50 down to 3.125. One last fact about Bitcoin, you know, for the US dollars, we have cents. The cents is the smallest denomination of our currency. So in Bitcoin, do you think, we all probably know somebody who has Bitcoin or trades in Bitcoin, or maybe we do. If we trade in Bitcoin, does it mean that if I have Bitcoin, does it mean that I have at least one coin, and so then I have at least $112,000? No, because there is the smallest denomination of Bitcoin, which is called a Satoshi. And that denomination is equal to 0.00000001 of a Bitcoin. That's 7 zeros and a 1, which is equal to, I believe, 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So, anybody interested in investing in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? Well, if you are, how might you do that? And if you want to get involved in cryptocurrency, the first thing you need to know about is a wallet, and Lori mentioned wallets earlier. So what a wallet is, it's not like our traditional wallets where you have dollars and cents in them. The wallets actually store a public key and a private key. The public key is what you use to buy and sell the Bitcoin, and the private key is what you use to access the Bitcoin. So the private key is kind of like your password. You need the private key to actually access the Bitcoin. And there is another term that is important, is a seed phrase. So if I have a wallet, let's say I lose the wallet, it gets destroyed, whatever, something happens to it, and I don't want to be without access to my 100 Bitcoin that I currently own. So when you create a wallet, you can create a seed phrase, and that's usually maybe 12 to 14 random words. So if I were to lose a wallet, I can recreate it and gain access to my cryptocurrency by using the 12 or 14 words, my seed phrase, to restore an access to my cryptocurrency. So let's talk about the investing part. And you use wallets, but Lori mentioned Coinbase earlier. Coinbase may be perhaps one of the easiest ways to start using cryptocurrency. You can create a Coinbase account, transfer funds to Coinbase, link your bank account up to it, whatever you're comfortable doing. And then you can start buying and selling and trading in cryptocurrency. That's probably the easiest way to do it. You don't have to manage the wallet and the public key and private key yourself. Coinbase does it for you. Some of the cons of Coinbase is that there is a central authority who is controlling your Coinbase account, and a lot of people who get involved in cryptocurrency think, I don't want to have any central person, any middleman between me and my cryptocurrency. And so they may not want to use Coinbase for that point. They may think cryptocurrency gives me a certain level of anonymity, which is not necessarily so true, because anybody, as Talar is going to show you later, anybody can go see any transaction on a blockchain. It's all public information. What it doesn't necessarily tell you, though, is who owns the cryptocurrency itself. So there is some anonymity, but it is not a completely anonymous thing. But the other issue with Coinbase is that obviously it's connected to the internet, and what's the problem with being connected to the internet? There's always scammers. There's always people trying to get your money. So people are concerned maybe about that connection to the internet, so they may want to look for other types of wallets. So the next type of wallet that is available is called a software or hot wallet. And that is a wallet that is a digital application. It runs on your computer, and it will digitally manage your public key and private key for you. So when you use the software wallet, you are removing the middleman, the Coinbase or the exchange, but you still have the connection to the internet. So you have a little more control, but you still have to worry about the scammers who might try to get access to your keys. So then the final type of wallet that I want to talk about is a hardware wallet. And I actually have an example of it. It's supposed to be here, but it is in the building, but it's not here. I can run and get it later if anyone wants to see what a hardware wallet looks like. And a lot of people prefer hardware wallets because they are not connected to the internet. So I may have a hardware wallet. It's storing my private key, my public key. It's not connected to the internet, so I don't have to worry about scammers trying to get access to my private key, and it gives me a little more control over my 100 Bitcoins that I have on my wallet, or wish I had. So I think that's a good overview of some of the more important terms related to cryptocurrency. And we have a glossary of, that has more comprehensive information if you want to look at that. And so now I'm going to turn this over to Austin, and he's going to talk about some regulatory issues related to cryptocurrency.
Before you finish,
Yes.
I have a quick question. What happens if somebody loses one of the hardware wallets in the cold wallet?
You have the seed phrase. So like if you buy a Trezor hardware wallet and you lose it, it gets damaged, it stops working, you can go buy a new Trezor wallet, use your seed phrase, and then reconnect to your cryptocurrency, and you're all set.
Unless you're that guy in England that threw his in the garbage and it wound up in the landfill.
And you don't remember your seed phrase.
And he has, there's over like $50 million of Bitcoin on it. The city won't let him go search the landfill to get it. He's been in like a 10-year court battle.
Yeah.
In there, and the city has said,
I think they made him stop.
Yeah.
Because he was digging through trash for 10 years.
he was willing to donate, if he found it, he was willing to donate half.
Pat, I've got a question. I've got two questions, and they're stupid, so that's fine.
Hopefully I have a decent
One of
answer.
the questions is, why would the value of Bitcoin go up? Okay, hold that. I mean, why would that be going up? And the other thing is, why did they come up with this to start with? What is this taking the place of?
So I think it's anonymity, and it may have started with people wanting to transfer funds back and forth. I don't know, maybe money laundering or something, so that no one sees the funds going back and forth. And the value goes up because it's supply and demand, right? The more people who want to get in and buy Bitcoin, then that's just going to cause the price of the Bitcoin to increase.